And we're back. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to season 2 of We Live in Color, hosted by myself, Deontay Damper, right here on Converge Media. Now, before we begin with our wonderful episode, I need you to like, share, and subscribe to Converge, the Emmy Award-winning Converge Media. Season 1 was amazing. We had so many great guests, from the members of Taking Black Pride to Nikita Oliver, Aviana Rodriguez Brown, Audra Booth, Coach T, just to name a few. We even had conversations about overdoses in community. We uplifted our community members on 12th and Weller as well with Converge Media for Overdose Awareness Day. This season will be no different. We will continue to center Black, lesbian, bi, queer, trans, two-spirited community members in this community. I'm so excited to be here. Now, when we thought about our first guest for season 2, who better to kick it off with, right? When we talk about performing, when we talk about advocacy, when we talk about community compass, she is the one. She's one of one. That's what I will say. I'm so happy to have the wonderful Randy Ford here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. The work that you've done in this community, you have really just been planting seeds, and have grown and have evolved in Seattle, in home, right? I want to just talk to you about how you started doing some of this work, and let's just take it back to the Columbia City, because people think that we think you're from everywhere, right?
Right.
But tell us a little bit about Randy.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I've been trying to get on this couch for a minute. I hope you know that. But yes, Randy Ford, she, her, goddesses pronouns. A lot of people also know me as Aisha Noir. Either name is very respectful.
Okay.
Queer community loves calling me Aisha. Business community loves calling me Randy. None of them are disrespectful. I love them in every space. But yeah, oh my goodness. I am the oldest of 2. I come from a really big church background. I was born in Columbia City.
Okay.
Yes, I was
Columbia
born.
City,
I was born, I believe, in Providence too.
Okay.
And is that still around?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But yeah, I was born in Columbia City. My upbringing involves a lot of, I like to call myself a nomad, because we moved around a lot growing up. So as much as I can claim Seattle as my home, a lot of my upbringing actually comes from South King County, Federal Way, Kent, Auburn at some points. I even lived in Tacoma for a little bit in college, but I always stayed true in Seattle pretty much. My mom's the youngest.
Okay.
She's the baby. And so me and her have a very interesting dynamic as well.
And let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
South King County.
South King County.
We're so happy that community has been a lot more progressive over the years, right? And you went to TJ, right?
I went to Todd Beamer.
Todd Beamer.
The other T.
And what was it like growing up in that space, right?
Yeah, Todd Beamer at the time was a very new school, so not a lot of people knew about it. And it kind of was structured as a magnet school. So you had different academies within one giant school. We had basically 3 principals throughout the entire school, right? An overall principal, and then each academy had their own principal. But Federal Way, I always say, is very diverse. You're surrounded by Koreans, you're surrounded by Pacific Islanders, surrounded by Latinx culture. Specifically, a lot of El Salvadorians went to my high school, and they would always be like, we're not Mexican, we're El Salvadorian. So I always knew to distinguish amongst different ethnic groups, and there was quite a handful of us Black kids, whether it be African American or Black American or African identified. It was a very, very diverse upbringing, very much a melting pot. I didn't get a culture shock until I went to college.
Okay. But navigating that.
But
navigating that even when we are who we are, right? How was that process out there in the South King County?
So I wasn't always like this growing up. A lot of people also don't know that. I was definitely navigating boyhood. Raquel Willis actually said this recently. She is a woman who had a boyhood. And I had to really be like, Me too, girl. Me
Describe
too.
boyhood. What is?
I was the man of the house growing up. My parents were separated when I was young, so I had to be the man of the house. Me and my younger brother, we were called the Ford brothers growing up, so it was very much, giving like y'all all you got, pretty much. A lot of men in my family had a lot of expectations for me. I look exactly like my dad. Like exactly like him. He gave me this face, this height, this everything. So there was a lot of expectations about the man I was going to grow up to be, being the oldest, being the namesake. I'm named after my dad as well. A lot of people don't know that, and I still love my name. And again, church, just the guise of church and church upbringing. You are a man, you grow up, provide for your family, get married, have kids, do the thing.
That expectation has to be heavy.
Heavy, especially when you sound like this and everybody's wondering why you walk a certain way, and they're like, we're gonna pray for you. Everyone's praying for me growing up, everybody.
How did that affect you?
I knew to not get into too much trouble, or at least be caught, at least. Very much so, I had to put on a show. Like I had to, do the thing, do well in school, well enough. And I did well enough until I went to college, but I realized in college that I was definitely not wanting to be who I was. I knew for some reason there wasn't an authenticity that I liked. Because I definitely went to college being like, well, I need more guy friends. Let me just go hang around dudes and figure it out, and like be a little bit more connected with church. I was in church groups in college, fraternities in college, and like, when I dropped out, I didn't understand, I was majoring in what I wanted to major in. I had the social, groups that liked me and everything, but I still was unhappy. And then after college was when I found out that I was non-binary. And I was like, what's that? Like, who's that? Because it's either gay, straight, or trans.
Right.
And at the time, I knew I wasn't trans. Or at least I didn't want to be, because all you saw was Jerry Springer, Maury.
The narrative, right?
The narrative.
Especially towards Black and brown,
especially
non-binary or trans community members.
And so if you're non-binary trying to be trans, that was definitely like you're either gonna do it or you're not. So very much so, like a lot of questions were forming in my head, a lot of conflict was happening that I didn't realize was conflict. I'm just thinking, is this depression? I'm not sure why. Like, why am I depressed? I have everything essentially that I want. I'm doing the things I should be doing, but I wasn't happy.
Well, we're going to figure out, we're going to talk a little bit more about that happiness,
Yeah.
because you also went into the areas of art. We're going to talk to Randy a little bit more about that art. Black boys, in a little bit of the pandemic. You're watching We Live in Color, Season 2.
What's up, everybody? Trey Holiday here with a special announcement. Something sexy for the city is coming to our town, Tacoma Dome, May 3rd. You want to get your tickets today because you want to see Ashanti, Monica, Maya, Kiki Wyatt, and Anne Marie. Y'all, I have the pleasure of emceeing this phenomenal concert. Join me and get your tickets today for an epic performance from these R&B divas.
The importance to share the history of the Buffalo Soldiers of Seattle and Buffalo Soldiers of everywhere, including cowboys and cowgirls of color everywhere, is really important because most likely they're forgotten. It's important that they're acknowledged, especially for girls like me who look up to them.
At a rodeo, it's got an impact on people when they see somebody doing something like that, especially a person of color, you know what I mean? It's got a big impact on people, I think.
Representing the Evergreen State, I am your Miss Teen Rodeo Washington, Jessa Thomas. Welcome to the Windswept Farm.
Looking for laughs? Looking for love? Fast-talking Figaro has got you covered. Toe-tapping melodies, lively staging, and colorful costumes. Don't miss The Barber of Seville, May 4th through 19th at McCall Hall. Tickets at seattleopera.org.
Hello, welcome to Elite Insights with Carlos Imani. We're looking to offer an in-depth look at event production industry through the lens of client experiences and joint successes. The podcast will emphasize guest interviews, focusing on client discussing their fields and reflecting on their collaboration with Elite Collective. Again, you're with Elite Insights. Carlos Imani here. I'll see you guys in a few.
And we're back. Of course, we're here with season 2, We Live in Color, season opener, Randy Ford.
Hey.
Sorry, we laughing a little bit during the break, but we were just talking about discovery and depression and like, how did you map yourself out of that or within it? Because we can say out of it, but you can't because it's you, right?
Yeah, so let me give a quick breakdown of timeline, right? So I went to college in 2011. And then around 2013 was when I dropped out. Around 2013, I was doing more freelance solo work. I was dancing at First AME.
Okay.
I was dancing at UW still, like teaching a little bit and also performing at some of like the Black Legacy Soiree galas and all of that. So I don't know. Innately, I knew I wanted to still stay connected with UW, but I didn't know why. Because again, essentially, I dropped out because I was unhappy, right?
Yeah.
And couldn't afford to stay there. So I'm just like, why am I still here? But anyway, they had some cute gigs for me. But then one of my friends who graduated a year earlier than me, Cheryl Delastrinos, gotta shout her out. She called me and was like, what are you doing? Are you still dancing? Are you still making work? We're starting a collective called AU Collective. Where, we're just tired of dancing for white choreographers and auditioning for white choreographers and them having us do all these things just to use our images and our bodies. And at the time I was like, I'm not doing anything that I would rather be doing more, right? Like I never saw myself as a company dancer because I could have easily auditioned for a company or two, but I knew I didn't want to be a male dancer or advertise as a male dancer in those companies, or have to do, I want to be lifted. You know what I mean? Like I'm dainty.
In all of who I am.
In all of who I am, right? And I just knew that environment wasn't one for me, that I wanted to be in. So Cheryl calls me, and they're in the midst of putting on their first show, and this was back in 2014, 2015. In the midst of doing our first show, we did it. It was great, and then I found this book. That was part of like my little research. This book was given to me by a woman named Catherine. We were making short stories of our lives and kind of being the hero of our own journey. So that was also a very therapeutic experience for me to talk about the expectations of boyhood. It's called Trans Portraits, and it's a book of letters written by all these other folks that are under the umbrella of transgender. So you have your gender variant, non-binary, gender fluid, gender queer, fairies, a lot of slurs we probably can't say, but reclamation words, and seeing and hearing trans people come up with their own definitions for themselves was very inspiring. And that was when I came to the conclusion that I was like, oh, I'm not a man or a woman. I am just me, and I'm going to figure that out. And then...
Did that stop you from getting gigs?
It scared me. Okay. I definitely worried. Because also at the time I'm teaching, and I'm Mr. Randy to a lot of my students at this time, right? So I'm also thinking, oh, are the students gonna transition? Is the job I'm working at gonna support this? Like there was a lot. Is my family, right? Like so many things. So I kind of still did it alone and to myself. But of course, like I had to eventually start bringing stuff out into the open because again, I'm not one to be closeted. I learned the closet was not for me very early. I knew I didn't want to be a person that lived a second life and, regret or whatever and like end up marrying somebody that I didn't want to. I've only seen that, right?
Yeah.
But
you blossomed.
And I blossomed.
And just to kind of take us a little forward, like, one of the, I went on a date. And we went to go see Black Boys.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the play and your experience? Because for anyone who did not see that play, and huge shout out to Danny Terrell
Yes.
for the direction of that, but you were centered in that it was just you really took it home
Yeah.
for the representation of all of us. Tell us about that experience.
For that. Yeah, so Black Boys premiered in 2018 or 2019, one of those, right? The first one. And at that time, I was still playing with pronouns. I still used he. I didn't really drop he at the time. And Aisha was nowhere to be found, just so you know as well. This is all Randy. Trying to be Randy out here, right? And I remember, so Black Boys, I was asked to be a part of that production by the Danny Terrell, my mentor, my auntie, my everything at this point, and coworker. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, Danny asked me to be a part of Black Boys and said that Danny was creating a show around the experiences of, queer Blackness, right? And it was under this narrative of Black Boys, and that's BOI. Because it wasn't, and it's very important to, make that distinction because Danny didn't want there to be this binary, like, we're making a show for Black men. And this is, how Black men do the Black man thing. It was really like a love letter to like our younger selves. It was an acknowledgement of our upbringings. And that show, I was the only trans-identified person a part of the cast at the time. And I remember there was a line that Danny wrote, that Danny and Jay Mace wrote, Jay Mace III, and it was, he had to die so that she could live. And the title was called He Died. And for the longest time, I thought that quote was for someone else in the part of the cast. But Danny looked at me and was like, I think that line is for you. And I was starting to take hormones, but I wasn't really in the thick of it yet. And I also took those in the quiet.
Yeah.
And I remember after that production being like, I am dropping my he pronoun and I'm only gonna use she or they to describe myself. And that was really when I embraced that I am a trans woman. I am a non-binary trans woman. I am a feminine of center person. I honor my divine femininity, and it looks different than the white woman. It looks different than the Black woman. It just looks like it is for me. And so Black Boys was really where, I had to forgive a lot of my younger self and nourish him so that she could be here sitting next to you across from you right now. Reclaiming
time.
Exactly.
I love it. And then we go, and really briefly, I do want to touch on too, I felt like there was such a resurgence that came with you reclaiming your time, especially in your community advocacy, which really, really started to be, you will hear me say on this show during season 2, Community Compass, because there were so many of us that needed to be guided. So really briefly, can you tell us, how did you utilize your advocacy in the areas of the pandemic? How were you during that space?
Whew, the pandemic. So the pandemic happened when Black Boys 2 was happening at the Moore. We did a Valentine's Day show. One night only. A lot happened that year. A lot of loss that year. A lot of loss. And then the shutdown happened around my birthday in March. And so the shutdown happens. I'm thinking we're going on a whole tour in 2020 because also in 2019, I was also premiering my own work called Queen Street over at Langston Hughes in partnership with CD Forum. And it was really, and it's a piece I've been working on for years at that time. I had done solo iterations of it. I had done some group pieces involving praise dancing. I did the Showing Out Contemporary Black Choreographers showcase and kind of had that going. And like I said, 2020 was supposed to be the year I take my transition with me and bring it to other communities and show, like what my transition looked like. I invited artists as well to talk about their various forms of Blackness and queerness and identity and transness. Because I didn't want my transition to be this cookie cutter that, oh, if I can do it, you can, because that's not how transition works. It's not an end goal. It's a continuous marathon and continuous evolution. And when the pandemic happened, everybody was on some BS. And very much wanted to go back to a normal that for me never existed. Because as a non-binary trans person, before the pandemic, I always say trans people were navigating a pandemic before the closure, navigating violence, navigating reports of ourselves being in the news, numbers in the 30s about people who've been murdered in the years to come. And a lot of Queen Street was birthed after Malaysia Booker was announced murdered. And my song that a lot of people love to this day called Make My Bag was also.
That's my song.
Right, and so I went from a dancer who I primarily identified as a dancer and choreographer, but it wasn't until that year where I started actually writing and realizing that I have a lot more to say than just people looking at me dance. I actually have stuff to put on paper. I actually have stuff to put a tune to. And I didn't want to dance to just any old song that you had to, like either edit out the F word or edit out them talking about trans misogynoir. Like I wanted this to be from my words and my perspective. And so I just almost playfully put a song together, but
it became a movement.
It became a movement.
And it became a movement in a movement you did. When we come back, we're going to discuss Lavender Wright's CD form in our We Live in Color tribute. You're watching We Live in Color.
Here on Back to Vesa, it's always been important to me that we uplift stories from across the region and that no matter where you live in the nation, you never have to miss a moment of the show as we continue to highlight the beauty, excellence, and resilience of our communities across the Pacific Northwest. Why? Because representation matters. So no matter where you live, be it the Central District or Centralia, Portland or Pullman, or anywhere across the country, I encourage you to join me on this Back to Vesa journey by downloading the free Fox Local app on your phone or smart TV as we continue to elevate the very best in our communities.
Looking for laughs? Looking for love? Fast-talking Figaro has got you covered. Toe-tapping melodies, lively staging, and colorful costumes. Don't miss the Barber of Seville, May 4th through 19th at McCall Hall. Tickets at seattleopera.org.
Africatown Plaza is our latest affordable housing development project. It's 126 units of affordable housing over community commercial space.
It's the first time in my career, and I've been doing this for 10 years, that I was able to design for people who look like me.
Africatown Plaza is a beacon of hope.
Africatown Plaza is a love letter to the community.
One in every 500 African Americans in the U.S. suffers from sickle cell disease. 1 in 3 African American blood donors is a match for patients with sickle cell. 1 appointment to donate blood with the American Red Cross can help save a life. Will you be that one? Visit redcrossblood.org/ourblood today to schedule an appointment at a location near you.
And we're back with We Live in Color, okay? Here we're ready for it. We were singing during the break. Can I just get my bag? I think that that's just symbolic because you were walking, and for people that aren't familiar, over Franklin High School's bridge and doing that. And I feel like this movement started and your advocacy voice just got louder.
It did.
And then here you are at Lavender Wrights. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so
Shout out to my booze.
Shout out to LRP. Oh my goodness. So Lavender Rights Project, again, another thing in 2019. A lot of stuff overlaps for me. I was part-time at Lavender Rights Project. Jalen Scott asked a group of Black trans women to come together and form a Washington Black Trans Task Force to address the crisis of violence against Black trans community in King County. And we came up with the biggest thing was homelessness and houselessness and the lack of resources. And so we changed this historically white organization, legal services organization, into a buy-in for Black and trans organization for Black community, but prioritizing Black trans community. And from there, I went from a part-time, kind of advocate employee to a development associate. Fundraising, I've always been a fundraiser for myself, but when 2020 happened, a lot of folks were looking, for Black causes to support, and my name was attached to Lavender Rights Project, and so a lot of our donor base was like, I recognize Randy for either being a teacher of one of my students, or being a teacher of mine, or I've seen her perform so many places.
Or the work that y'all have been putting in,
the work that we've been putting in, and Jalen was like, you should look to going into development. And so from there I went from development associate to a development director. And from there was really just pushing the need for people to prioritize Black trans people. Because in order for Black liberation to ever happen, you need to prioritize the most marginalized, and Black trans women and femmes are the most marginalized in our community. And so if you liberate them, everyone else's liberation will come into the effect.
I love this.
It will come. It will come. It doesn't mean your liberation's on hold. It means it will come.
And I love that. And I want to say, in coming, you kept going, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the LRP PSA, which has been so powerful, right? And being able to leave your mark with LRP, and still, because we have some more parts coming with that too. So excited. And then CD Forum.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little about it?
CD Forum has been there the entire time, which is also just super ironic and wild to think about. One of the first places I walked into dancing was Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute, where I met Danny and met Sharon.
Yeah.
Never would I think 10 years later I'd be running the organization after Sharon as my predecessor, and working alongside Danny, who's my mentor, as now a coworker. CD Forum, I was a fly in the milk for a lot of my life before 2018. And then I really started prioritizing, I wanted to be a part of Black productions, Black trans collectives. I just wanted to be pro-Black. I was tired of being the only Black person, the only Black representation. CD Forum, Sharon was like, I'm leaving. I have my eyes on you. And I was like, I just became a development director. I have no time. I have no, what? What do you mean? But then once I started applying for the work, I was at LRP for almost 4 years, and realizing that I missed the arts a lot. I was doing social advocacy with not a lot of art at the forefront, but realizing that my art bug, my art baby, was like, you need to take all this you're learning in LRP and bring it back to the arts and make it full circle. And so right now I'm on month 9 being the ED for Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas. Wild. It's our 25th year anniversary. Right now I'm learning, and so learning about the history before the 10 years that I was a part of it is very beautiful to me. It's a big research project, and I love it. I love being in the CD, working out of Langston, utilizing, my resources, and also learning new things about the org prior. So yeah, CD Forum, it's that girl.
It is that girl. And I just want to shout out, because I love the partnerships that you and Langston have, that y'all have been working. So shout out to Ebony Arunga.
Yeah.
And what can community do now to support, right? If you could, because you do a good call to action. That's what I love about you, sis. That's why we had you be the season 2 opening interview, because it's like, let community know how they can support and be a part of that liberation movement. Let them know how they can support CD Forum.
So community. A lot of you had a lot to say in 2020 about prioritizing Black liberation, Black orgs, Black life. And it is 2024, and we have not seen that same energy since December of 2020. And so I need you all to muster up and dig deep into not only your hearts, but your pockets, and bring back all of that talk you had for us, because right now we are still in the exact same predicament, navigating a scarcity of resources. It is a shame that 25 years of CD Forum has been navigating off of scraps. And so if you want to see another 25 years and see EDs like myself be refreshed leaving an org after we're serving time, go to cdforum.org and hit that donate button. You can follow us on Instagram at CD Forum. You can follow me on Instagram at the Aisha Noir if you have a hard time finding CD Forum. But honestly, like, really think about 2020 and how much pressure and embarrassment you put yourselves through, and you have time to save yourselves. You still have time. Prioritize us. We're not through the 2020s yet. We need to be prioritized. We need you. Thank you.
And that's how you open a show. I love you, sis. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
You are a part of the Community Compass, and I appreciate you being a part of the liberation movement. I love you. Come back anytime. And thank you, community. Thank you for tuning in. And since we just got done talking about liberation, next week we got pastor of Liberation Church, Jamel Witherspoon, right here. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to Converge Media, but be sure to tune in next week for We Live in Color. I'm Deontay Damper. Peace out. Hey everybody, Deontay Damper. To learn more about our blog posts, community events, and more, go to whereweconverge.com.